Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast dedicated to helping agency owners thrive. I'm Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach creative entrepreneurs to build the agency of their dreams. Today, I'm excited to have Banach on the show. Christian is a seasoned business development expert who began his entrepreneurial journey in high school by running a successful concert promotions business. He's worked with big names like Lady Gaga and Pitbull and led marketing activations for brands like Disney and Toyota. After navigating the challenges of the 2008 recession, Christian pivoted to business development, helping agencies generate millions in revenue with clients like Kohl's and Constellation brands. Now he's on a mission to help agencies and consultancies land 6- and 7-figure opportunities predictably. Christian, welcome to the show. I'm really happy to have you here today.
Yeah, Steve, thank you for having me on. Really excited for this conversation.
So real quick, you sent me, I don't remember where I saw it, maybe in a deck that you sent me, your high school promotion business. It was like you and maybe a couple of buddies dressed to the nine, and it looked like this is straight out of like that was like the roots of everything photo. Give the quick story on like the path to running your own consultancy now.
Yeah, so it was definitely a winding road, but as you mentioned in the bio, I started a business which initially in high school it was throwing events at local banquet halls and booking DJs, and it was a great way for me to pay my way through college and meet some girls. So it was a lot of fun, but after I got out of college, I got a job as a marketing director at a company, and decided after about a year that I was having more fun and making more money doing the events. So those banquet hall parties ended up turning into these large scale concerts and working with some really big name Grammy award winning artists. And that's what the business was for a long time. But then we were actually approached by an experiential marketing agency that was needing some help with some of the production and marketing of one of their experiential events. And that really opened me up to the world of experiential marketing. And light bulb went on, and I, rather than me risking all of my money throwing a concert, I was having brands paying me to throw events for them. So we ended up starting a separate division, and that was really my foray into the world of marketing at agencies. And then, as you mentioned in the bio, around 2008, when the recession hit, my business really started to dry up. And I had grown primarily through word of mouth referrals. I didn't have a sales process. So I actually went out, I hired a sales consultant, and they came in and really opened me up to the world of business development. And I loved it. And I decided after about a couple of years, it was time for a change for me. And I ended up leaving and selling off some of the assets that I had from my concert promotions business and went full steam ahead into the agency world and business development. And here I am about a decade later, in the industry.
Amazing. I think that's a great, curve ball that was thrown at you to kind of shake things up. We saw that same destruction of the experiential industry in 2020 with COVID. The in-person experiences were just not able to happen, and agencies that were deeply niched in experience marketing were just tanked out. So good pivot. You, in your consultancy, you work with agencies, help them foster relationships. You talk a lot about relationship marketing. And I want to dig into really like what are some of the tactical things that agencies can bring on board to kind of build out those funnels. And before we hit the record button, you said, an agency will come to me and they'll say, we just want leads. There's so much prior to I just want leads. So I don't know if you can talk through kind of what some of those pitfalls that you see agency owners falling into, or agencies of all sizes falling into, and is it sector-based challenges? Is it size-based challenges? Some of those kind of things.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting in the industry that we're in, it is really more of a word of mouth and referrals type of a business. We have worked and advised some of the biggest, global agencies like BBDO and GDB, down to small boutique firms that might be, 10 people or less. And inevitably, they all tend to struggle with the same type of things. They've grown through word of mouth referrals, and they don't really have a more proactive approach to developing opportunities for themselves. And they may have stopped getting leads. They may have not been getting the right types of leads. Maybe they're trying to enter a new market. Maybe they are trying to go up market, work with different type of clients, or some combination thereof. So inevitably, they realize that waiting for the phone to ring is not really a great growth strategy, and they need to do something, more proactively. So that's usually when they'll come to us. Is that, hey, we need leads. But to your point, there's a whole lot of work that needs to get done before most firms are ready to get leads.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, because they've grown through more word of mouth and referrals, they have sort of a hodgepodge of experience. They work with across many different types of verticals. They offer, all different types of services. And from a marketing and sales standpoint, they really lack a specialization in any one given area. And that might work if you're working with, people that already know, like, and trust you through your networks. But when you're going to reach out to somebody who doesn't know, who you are, they're looking to work with best of breed. They want you to be able to have a deep expertise into, their industry, or to whomever they're marketing to, or within a certain specialization. So for a lot of firms, before you can even get into generating leads, we need to really get clear on your positioning and, what you're offering and what you're saying and what is your point of view on how to solve the problems that these particular target audiences that we're reaching out to are experiencing. And so that's kind of some of the work that we need to do, initially with firms. And that can mean everything from just obviously defining that, but then how does that come to life on your website? How does that come to life in your capabilities deck and in your case studies? So there's a lot of this foundational, type of work that needs to get done, before you can even, get into the point where you're going to go after leads. And if you do, you could try it, but you're probably not going to see, as great a success as you could otherwise.
So you're really taking them through kind of a whole, like a full ecosystem, or the full holistic approach of messaging and positioning, and niching into specific verticals, and then setting up a kind of leadership or thought leadership program.
Yeah, well, when we first started, we weren't. We were just like, we'll get you to leads. And when clients would come to us and they were perhaps not ready, we would advise them, hey, you need, to go get A, B, and C done. And unfortunately, most of them wouldn't get that done. So then sort of light bulb went on and said, hey, we need to step in and we need to, help our clients there. And so we've, over the last, year or two, started to introduce more of these types of foundational type services, into the mix. And that continues to evolve, as we learn more about what it takes to be successful from working with more and more clients, and, what type of thought leadership, that they need to be producing, how they should be building awareness of themselves in the marketplace, all of these other things that contribute to your ability to generate leads.
Do you see the same efficacy / challenges on, from like the BBDOs of the world to the 10-person boutique, or is it totally, completely different animals?
There are definitely some different challenges that some of the bigger players have versus the smaller. But you'd be surprised. When we were working with some of those bigger firms, there is still a low awareness in many cases of even some of the big firms amongst these marketers. I think a lot of agencies think that these marketers are following all the different agency news and what's happening and who won what award. And, for the most part, most of these marketers are not. They're living in their world. If they're a healthcare marketer, they're living in healthcare marketing. They're not following, who won Agency of the Year and who's winning at Cannes and all of that. So there is still some of those same types of challenges. Some of the bigger agencies, though, they tend to have more resources that they could put behind developing thought leadership, and and they tend to have, strategists that can kind of come in and help shape their point of view on certain problems. So there is, certainly advantage to having some of those types of resources that some of the bigger firms have. But on the other end, some of the bigger firms, they're part of holding companies. They are, it's really tough sometimes for them to to make, moves at a speed that a smaller and more nimble firm can make. So, there's really, pros and cons, I think, to both approaches. But I wouldn't say it's easy for either one. They just might have some different challenges that they face.
Yeah, the small boutique shop, more nimble, but maybe lack of resources compared to behemoths where they can't act as quickly, but they can easily dedicate, hey, here's a 3 or 4 person team, own this as a project a little more easily than, boutique shop where there's the constant chasing of mindset of treat our own work like a client, but then when resources are tapped, the first client that gets the shaft is the internal stuff. So it's hard to have that mindset a lot often. So you focus a lot on thought leadership, and that thought leadership typically takes the frame of newsletters. You're a big fan of emails, newsletters. Pros and cons there also. Like, what's the big push there for you?
Yeah. So one of the discoveries that we've really had over the last, several years is that people that go through in our program and do the lead generation, those that are seeing exponentially better results tend to have a couple different attributes. One could be that they truly are doing something unique and different. They're solving a problem unique and differently than everybody else. And that can be a challenge because digital marketing for many is digital marketing. Everybody has a little bit of a different flavor from it, but for the most part, it could be considered a commodity, a lot of the different services that agencies have. So for a lot of agencies, it's tough to really do something that's actually unique and different. So that's kind of one thing that we look at. Are you doing something unique and different? Another thing that we see agencies have exponentially better results from is if they've done original research. We see a lot of success reaching out to brands and saying, hey, we have done some research into your industry or your target audience or something like that. And it's proprietary and we'd love to share some of these insights, with you. That type of thought leadership content, tends to do, really, really well, for our clients. So that's another thing that we're really advising clients on. If they haven't done is, think about how you can develop that. And then the third area that we see is if there is brand awareness, in the market. And when I say brand awareness, like I don't mean that everybody in the marketing, world knows who you are, but does a piece of the marketing world know who you are, really well? So again, if you're, somebody that works in alcoholic beverages, does the people in the alcoholic beverage industry know who you are? So picking a small niche, but having awareness within that. So with all of that said, we've really started to think about then how do we help activate that for clients? And what we've found is, an email newsletter checks a lot of those boxes off. It is a way that a brand can, build a specific list from a niche target audience and essentially show up in the prospect's inbox on we advise actually a weekly basis, a weekly frequency. And it's a way then to demonstrate your thinking, your thought leadership. And if you've done original research, that's a great, channel to also push out that original research. But one thing I want to kind of zoom back on when I'm talking about an email newsletter, I'm not talking about what most agencies are producing right now as an email newsletter. Typically, agencies their newsletters about, hey, we just made this new hire. Here's our summer interns. Here's the award we just won. It's all self-promotional type of content, which doesn't resonate with the prospects, especially those that don't know you. They don't care who you just hired. I'm sure they're a fabulous person, but that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for true thought leadership. So the lens that we look through for an email newsletter is it has to make your target audiences, has to let them do their job better. After reading it, they have to become smarter because of your news or because of your views. It can't be this kind of self-promotional type of content. So we've seen a lot of success, doing that because there's a lot of benefits which we can get into, of the newsletter. To again, it'll help you build awareness and keep you top of mind from your prospects while positioning you as an authority, on a said topic.
I love that you mentioned, leaning into becoming known in the industry. And so if my agency is a specialist in, let's say, healthcare, and I'm going to these healthcare events and I'm in the healthcare marketing space as a speaker, like you said, doing original research, testing theories, that makes me a thought leader in that overall industry, as opposed to I'm just a really good agency guy who comes up with really good ideas, and look at all of my awards. Vastly different on how that's going to land in an inbox. Are you, and then talk about the strategy behind list building, because I think that's essential, where it's like, cool, here's everybody I've ever met. Let me dump them into a list somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, and I think from a list standpoint, I think there are some things that we've been doing with clients that is pretty interesting. And so obviously, as you mentioned, you probably have an existing list of past clients, friends, vendors, things like that. Like that's a great base to start, off with. However, if you're really looking to penetrate a specific, niche, you need to do more than just rely on your existing, contacts. So there are obviously organic ways that you can, grow your list. There are, putting, registrations on your website and social media accounts and running paid targeted advertising, doing webinars, things like that, which, we all advise, our clients to do. But that is generally going to be a slower burn. And to get typically, C-suite VP level people to opt into your list, is challenging. So what we work on with our clients is actually, defining what is your ideal company target profile, who within those companies do you want to be speaking with, and then using different databases to build a list, of those particular prospects. And then we can put those prospects, onto your email newsletter. There's a misconception, I think, out there that that violates canned spam or other types of laws, which it does not. In a B2B context, there are some canned spam things you need to follow, but you can add people to your list. And the next question is, well, will they want to receive this email? Will they engage with the email? And our experience has been they will, provided that is a true thought leadership newsletter that helps them do their job better. If it is a self-promotional thing about your awards and this and that, they probably will opt out or even hit the spam button. But if it is a true thought leadership type newsletter, you're going to get responses where people are like, I'm not really sure how I got on your list, but this is fabulous. We'd love to talk. We'd love to learn more about you. So it all comes back to having that content. The wrong content, you're gonna have some challenges with it. But it's a incredible way to, within a short period of time, build a list of your exact target audience, the exact people that you want to be speaking to, and get a message directly into them. And I think there's really no channel out there that you can really do that to, which is why we're so bullish on email newsletters.
Is there like a right mix of like 80, 20, 70, 30 of like true thought leadership? Here's a white paper we wrote, here's some research, and mixing it in with here's some case studies on some work we've done or recent awards, or like true culture stuff, because agencies really think culture is their key differentiator amongst like maybe process, that kind of stuff. But reality is it's not, but they want to lean into it. So I'm curious, is there a mix, or you're like, no, don't ever include it?
Yeah, no, we always say like 80% should be thought leadership, and then 20% or less can be more of more about you. So I think that's fine. I think it also adds some personality to the newsletter as well. So I would advise that there is some of that happening, but be thoughtful on what you include in there. Maybe your summer interns that you just hired is not the right thing, but maybe a case study, because a case study they can learn from, and it could in fact benefit them as well as benefit you.
Yeah. Any thoughts on LinkedIn? I guess this year rolled out their newsletter program, and that feeds into people's emails and can expand beyond your own personal network. Any thoughts on that tool and the reach that it has?
Yeah, so we've looked at that, and we're not too sure that that's really the right place to go. You're really then trying to build two lists. Plus, one of the major benefits of the email newsletter is you own that, right? You can make sure that gets in front of those subscribers. Versus the newsletter feature on LinkedIn, you're really more beholden to them and their platform and their algorithm, and who knows, they could change that, at a dime. So, we don't really do much with the newsletter feature on LinkedIn, but another way, LinkedIn has rolled out the thought leadership ads, which is a way to promote individuals, on LinkedIn. So what we've been doing more and more now of is actually taking some of the content from the newsletter, so some of your thought leadership content, having your executive team post that, and then boosting those posts. And with LinkedIn's targeting, you can get very specific to your exact target audience as well. And it's, again, another touch point, another way that you can show up, in your target audience and add value back to them. But we see more value coming from an approach like that than versus, say, using the newsletter feature.
Interesting. Yeah. I've seen people do it both, and then I get duplicate content. I've seen, multiple thought leaders within a single agency. And so again, then it's almost duplicate content. What are your thoughts? I guess it depends on the agency size, but elevating more than one C-suite or senior leadership person on the team.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I would advise that, everybody, should play some part, not even just the senior leaders. Now, does it mean just regurgitating the exact same posts? No, I think, you should be taking any of the content and putting your own spin on it, making it in your own words. It's not just reposting something, a blog from your website or something. So you should still have your point of view put on it. So there is, the crux of the message may still be the same, but, you're maybe telling the story a little bit differently. But yeah, I think the more people that can get involved in the new business process, the better.
Yeah. So it's coming into Q4 2024, and we still have not seen video integration into email work well at all. Thoughts on, mock video, like you can put the thumbnail in as an image and click through to YouTube or click through to Vimeo or social media. Thoughts on video versus like live text and the efficacy there?
Yeah, I think, most people, you got to think about the medium, right? They're in their inbox, and what do you expect to see when you're in an email inbox? You're expecting to read something. So, I think that could be part of the struggles. When you're on TikTok or you're on YouTube, you're expecting to watch video. So to see written text in YouTube would be weird. Just like I think in email, video can be seen as weird. Plus, it requires you to click out. And that's another thing, with a lot of the newsletters that we work with, our advice generally is to try to keep them in there. It's not about trying to necessarily get a click for them to go to your website. That's an extra friction point that potentially, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but you can lose a lot of traffic there. So try to keep them in the newsletter themselves, reading the content there, and that's where we see it a little bit better. Now, again, there's some stories that are much better told in video. So I'm not saying don't ever use video, but I think generally speaking, your focus should be more on written text and inside of the full email.
Yeah. And then, so, essentially we're using this as a tool to build thought leadership. You mentioned the know, like, trust factor. And so if I get in front of the CEO or CMO or whoever of the brand I want to work for, over time, they're going to know my name, my agency's name. They're going to trust me. Is there a point where I can say, all right, now I can go for an ask, or how do I get them, further down the funnel or into the pipeline with true deals? Do I say, hey, I seen you open 30 of my emails. Can we have lunch? Like, what's that next shift to get them out of just readership?
Yeah, sure. So what we see with the newsletters is kind of two things. There's sort of direct and indirect lead generation happening. You will see, if you're producing a regular, good thought leadership type newsletter, you will see prospects just reply to the newsletter and say, hey, been following you guys for a certain amount of time. Would love to chat, learn more about who you are. We love those, obviously. But, the objective here is not just to rely on that. And with another reason we love the newsletters is there's a lot of analytics behind it that you can see who's been opening, who's been engaging, what type of content they've been engaging. If you're a little bit more advanced, it might be connected more to your CRM, and you could see maybe what pages of your website they might have visited. So what we like to do is on a monthly basis, look at those analytics and determine who seems to be, over-indexing in engagement. And if they are someone in your ideal, target profile, yeah, absolutely, reaching out to them with a quote unquote cold type of email or a cold call. But the difference here is, I say kind of quotation marks behind cold, because it's not cold. They know who you are. They have been on your newsletter for a period of time. They've obviously been engaging. Otherwise, you wouldn't be reaching out. So, we see time and time again, those types of emails get responses like, I don't take these types of calls. I don't really respond to these types of emails, but, I love your newsletter. So yeah, let's talk. So, so I think absolutely that is a big piece of this, and connecting it to your sales, outreach, is how a lot of opportunities are generated.
Yeah, I think that making that move to the next stage requires somebody to be proactive. Like you said, you've got to be watching the metrics. You've got to know when the timing is right. You don't want to scare somebody off with like an early ask or anything like that. And even that initial outreach touch point, it's not like, hey, do you have $1 million deal for me? It's, can we have a conversation? And then that sense of curiosity and the traditional kind of biz dev role needs to kick in. Um, so yeah, I think that's a wonderful process. Any other kind of last minute newsletter snafus or things to avoid, potholes to kind of avoid that people should watch out for?
Um, I think a couple things I'd like to point out is, one of the biggest challenges besides the list, in which I think we've outlined a solve for that, is creating the content. Agencies are busy; they've got client work. How are we going to create this content on a consistent basis? And consistency is key. I want to advise, like, again, you might have a newsletter, but if you're not sending it out at least every other week, you're getting forgotten. A
Yeah.
monthly newsletter, even, maybe it could work, but we really see best success with weekly or maybe bi-weekly, certainly not quarterly, but you ideally want to become a habit where every Tuesday at 10 a.m., they can expect to get your email. And over
Yep.
time, they will. You will develop some fans like that. So I want to stress that, but it's back to the content piece. There's a couple ways to look at the content. There is obviously original content where you're, writing it from, totally in your own words, totally your own thoughts, and that's great. That's probably kind of the gold standard, if you will. But there's also other types of content that you can do that still adds a lot of value back to your target audience. Most agencies can repurpose content. Maybe you have given speeches, or you've had blog posts, or you've responded to RFPs, or there's all this other content that could be available that could be turned into content for your email newsletter. So you're not starting from scratch. And then the third piece would be curating content, where, if you're maybe a healthcare marketer, paying attention to what's happening in healthcare marketing and including that type of content into your newsletter. It could be as simple as you just providing the links and kind of the synopsis, or it could be, links to that as well as your kind of point of view on it. So that's a much lighter lift than creating something from scratch, every single week. And again, as long as it's providing value back to the prospect, it can be very effective still. And so I don't like hearing like, well, we can't produce the content because, at least doing the repurposing or the curating of content could still be very valuable and at least get the engine moving. And that's the most important thing, is get started, get it out there, get your name out there. And once you start seeing some success and some wins, it's a lot easier to allocate more resources to it. But if you never start, you're never going to get to that point.
Brilliant. Yeah, you got to start somewhere, be consistent. I also think it's important to talk about how we respond to, oh, so and so unsubscribed, and it's okay to kind of cull the list and get the list a little bit more focused over time. Not everybody's going to stick around, but you want to make sure that there are people that are engageable, and now you've got a more honed in list over time. So, I mean, the value of that is immense, right?
Absolutely. This is B2B sales. With most of the agencies we work with, we're talking 6 and 7 figure type opportunities. They're not looking to close hundreds of clients per year. For many agencies, a few really good clients would be enough. So you don't have to have a list of 100,000 or 10,000, to still be effective, with the newsletter. It could be, several hundred, or a low in thousands, and you could still have a really effective newsletter. So it's, you got to kind of take yourself out of the world of more of the consumer side, where you need a huge volume. B2B, a very small but targeted list, can be still very, very effective.
Yeah, fully agree. I love that. Real quick, want to jump to some random rapid fire questions to wrap this thing up. First is, what's something that you can't wait to get back to and are kind of binging, whether it's a hobby, a book, a show, a podcast, a thing like that?
That's an easy one. I've become addicted to pickleball. About 2 years ago, I stumbled into that, and I've gone full steam ahead. I was always very athletic growing up, so but obviously as I got older, I was unable to compete at a competitive level. So I picked up pickleball and play, in tournaments usually, every week, every other week. So that's my little obsession right now.
Very cool. I love that. What's a tool, or let's not even call it a tool. What's something you recently integrated into your life, physical, digital, otherwise, that you look back and you're like, how did I live without this, whatever, kitchen gadget or device or app or thing?
Yeah, I guess my best answer there would be probably ChatGPT and some of the other AI tools that have, interestingly enough, just become part of my normal routine now on how I, do certain things, and they continue to amaze me some of the different ways that it works. And it's not perfect, and there's areas that I use it, areas that I don't, areas that I have to edit things, but it's just really accelerated the amount of productivity that I have, and I'm excited to see where it goes because it's already had such a major impact for me.
Yeah, agreed. It's become invaluable. I jump to that far more than I jump to Google anymore these days. I think that the feedback is much stronger. And then finally, what is just a super invaluable piece of business advice that you can share with the listeners?
Super advice for business owners. Yeah, I think I try to preach this to myself, as well, is that, this is not a direct line, success. There's going to be curves that you're going to have to go through. There's going to be good days. There's going to be bad days. And you can't let the highs get you too high. You can't let the lows get you too low, but at the end of the day, you have to love, what you're doing. And I love what I'm doing. Whether it's on the pickleball court or whether it's, working on my business, but I love the grind. I love trying to figure it all out. So at the end of the day, I don't really tell people I got to go to work, today, because to me, it's not work. It's just what I do. It's a passion of mine. So, I encourage everybody out there to try to find that for themselves. And if they're not, in a situation, like that, try to find, that situation for yourself, because it makes life a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, find it or build it, frankly. I fully agree. Absolutely. Life's too short not to. Christian Banach, thank you so much for your experience, your wisdom. Check out christianbanach.com for relationship building and newsletter and biz dev advice and support for your agency. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.